Good evening, everybody. The Trump administration today launching a full court press to sell a tax cut plan the president says will create a middle-class miracle. President Trump, in fact, says the middle class is so important that he mentioned the words middle class 10 times in his speech in Indianapolis yesterday. But the globalists, Goldman Sachs elitist and his administration, they're having a hard time coming to grips with it all, apparently. Chief White House economic advisor Gary Cohn today tasked with selling the tax plan, and inexplicably, he couldn't guarantee the proposal would lower taxes for the middle class, or at least all of it.
If I'm hearing you correctly, you can't guarantee that no middle-class family will get a tax increase. There will be middle-class families who get a tax increase under your plan, correct?
George, there's an exception to every rule.
So that's a yes.
So look, I can't guarantee anything. You can always find a unique family somewhere.
And if that wasn't bad enough, Cohn doubled down on it at the White House press briefing today.
You could find me someone in the country that their taxes may not go down. We have all different types of structures in the tax code. I'll guarantee you could find someone in this country, maybe one person, who their taxes may not go down.
My first guest says President Trump is committed to cutting taxes tremendously for the middle class. And she says the president isn't giving up on repealing Obamacare. Joining us tonight, Kellyanne Conway, counselor to President Trump. Kellyanne, good to have you with us. I just got to congratulate you first with bringing some people who've been very wayward to heel.
Lou, this has really been the test of presidential leadership, and the president gets an A+. He's been working on fundamental tax relief and tax cuts since the transition, since really when he was elected. And this week is the culmination of those efforts. This will be a middle-class tax plan that brings major cuts of a generation or two, something we haven't seen in 36 years, probably ever. So what does it do? We're reducing the rate.
When you say 36 years, Kellyanne, I mean, you're taking us back to President Reagan, the 1986 Economic Recovery Reform Act. I mean, that's going big in bold, and so is the president in terms of his aims here. Is that level of change and tax reduction possible?
It is for Donald Trump as president. Let's see what Capitol Hill will do. We have the support of a lot of the small business groups and job creator groups on the outside. We've been working very diligently with them because we know this is a grassroots engineered effort. We want this to bubble from the bottom up. But you've got these Democratic senators in states, Lou, where people, employers, job creators, job holders, job seekers all want and deserve a tax break. I even think tax reform is sort of swamp-like semantics. It seems so meek when you think about President Trump's vision for making sure that job creators go from 35% to 20%. That spurs economic growth. That'll create more jobs. America's going to get a pay raise through this tax bill, and the middle class will benefit the most. They get a child care tax credit. The brackets shrink from 7 to 3, and your percentage, the percentage you pay goes down.
Yeah, Kellyanne, I mean, we've already, of course, reported all of that, and our audience understands it. What I think is difficult for many people to understand, at least to this point, the discussion from the White House, from Congress and the Senate has been about a tax cut, a tax reform. It seems some in the party are pushing reform when the president keeps talking about an extraordinary, revolutionary, historically deep tax cut. So what becomes interesting is we know that the baseline here that the president, the cap is on taxes, he wants at least down to 20% instead of 35%, a 40% reduction in taxes for corporate America. But there's a lot of ambiguity. I mean, we listened to Gary Cohn, the president's economic advisor. I mean, I haven't got an idea in the world what's going to be done for the middle class, and that's where the president says his emphasis is.
The middle class will benefit from the president's vision. There's no question. In many different ways, they'll get an immediate
but we
tax.
know how much. We know how much for corporate America. We don't know how much for the middle class. And if they're the focus, when do we find out how much for the middle class?
Lou, the middle class knows what they pay right now, what bracket they're in, and so they can basically estimate what kind of relief that they will receive. But remember, too, if we make job creators more competitive. That helps everyone, because what happens is if you are that welder or that carpenter or that factory worker worried about keeping your job or looking for a new job, when you reduce the tax burden on America's job creators, you encourage them to stay here. And we also want to repatriate the $2.8 trillion in wealth that's legally parked overseas. We've shipped jobs and wealth overseas. You bring that home. And then you keep it fair as well.
I'm absolutely
and so
with
the middle class benefits because the brackets are shrunk, but also the percentage that you pay in taxes goes down. Also, the exemption being doubled is very important to the middle class.
One instance, you're talking concretely, specifically, and understandably, I think, to everyone about a 20% cap on taxes for corporate America. There is just a lot right now on a tax cut that the president said is focused on the middle class we're not hearing about. Well, you talk about repatriation of that corporate money that's parked in overseas banks. How is it going to be, how will the corporate America be incentivized to invest in this country?
Well, they're going to need to. It's a great question, Lou. They're going to need to. I mean, in the past, when job creators have received a major tax reduction, they have invested that money, by and large, back into their companies. They can give their employees raises, and they ought to.
No, I know what the possibilities are. I understand possibilities and the range of choices.
That's who Donald Trump is.
But what I don't understand is how are you all going to incentivize corporate America to do the right thing?
They should be incentivized because they want to hire Americans so we can continue to buy American, and you want to keep those factories here. You just do. Now look, you also see just the prospect of a tax revolution by President Donald Trump has led the stock market to explosive and historic gains. The GDP, the last president said 2% is the new normal.
I know that. Everybody watching and listening to you knows that. And we understand that this is going to be a work of art, political artwork, political craft. I was just curious about where we were with something that's very important, and I'm sure that in the days and weeks ahead we will see that.
It's a work of art, but the math lesson is important here too. You will pay less taxes, and people should think about how much more they're paying in direct and insidious taxes and regulations and user fees and all the rest of the nonsense over the last 8 to 10 years.
Thanks so much, Kellyanne.
Thank you,
Good to see
Lou.
you. Kellyanne Conway. We're coming right back. We're going to be talking about tax cuts. We're going to be talking about the NFL and the president who had a belly full, and thank goodness he did. Stay with us. President Trump promises huge, historic, and revolutionary tax cuts.
This is a tax plan for jobs and growth for our country. It'll be the largest reduction in terms of dollars of any plan ever in the history of the country.
Can Congress deliver legislative victory? Will it benefit the middle class? We take that up with Congressman Sean Duffy here next. And the Trump administration lifting shipping restrictions for Puerto Rico to expedite aid to the hurricane-ravaged island. We'll have the latest on the relief effort here next. Stay with us. Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price trying to rectify his travel scandal involving the use of expensive private jets that left President Trump fuming. Fox News has just learned that Secretary Price will be cutting a personal check, paying about $52,000 to reimburse the federal government. Price also vowing to permanently halt his use of charter flights. Sometimes that big shot-itis grips a lot of folks. He's apparently had a very brief case of it. Majority Whip Steve Scalise today making a triumphant return to the floor of the House of Representatives. His first appearance since he was seriously wounded in the June shooting at a congressional baseball practice. Here he is.
If you look at the outpouring of love, of warmth, of prayer, my gosh, Jennifer and I have been overwhelmed with all of that outpouring, and it's given us the strength to get through all of this and to get to this point today. And it starts with God. So I'm definitely a living example that miracles really do happen.
And thank God. Our next guest was there for Scalise's emotional return to the chamber. He joins me now to talk about the critical legislative challenges ahead for the House, next week's vote on a federal budget. The list goes on. Joining us tonight, Congressman Sean Duffy, member of the House Financial Services Committee. Great to have you here.
Good to see you, Lou. Thanks for having me on.
That is wonderful to see Steve Scalise back and walking with crutches. I mean, that's remarkable.
It was fantastic. It was heart-touching. It was something that unified both Republicans and Democrats, welcoming him back to the chamber. And I thought it was great that he pointed out the influence of God in his life and his recovery. And all the people that reached out to him, Republican and Democrat, world leaders, local leaders. It was a cool moment for the House.
And you know, he looks like leadership material to me.
Absolutely. And you know what? I mean, this was nip and tuck for him. I mean, this was no easy recovery.
So seriously wounded, shot through the pelvis, which I mean, one of the most difficult things from which to recover.
And that bullet shattered and did a lot of damage when it hit. So thank God he's back, and we're looking forward to having his leadership back in the House. It'll be good.
Well, the majority leader is, he looks like he's primed and ready. So, and a lot to do. The president launching the tax reform or tax cut initiative. There appears usually for you guys to be considerable coordination from Capitol Hill to the White House to the Republican National Committee. Yeah. This time it looks different. Is it?
So if you look what happened in healthcare and what a disaster that was, we've learned our lessons. So instead of the House jumping out ahead of everybody else, like we did in healthcare, the plan was, let's set up a framework. Let's get everybody to agree. The president, the Senate, and the House all agreeing to what this framework should look like. And now we have to fill in, some of the gaps. But everyone agrees to that framework, Lou, which is a great starting point to actually get tax reform done. It's going to be historic.
And the president now says the cap on corporate taxes is 20%.
Right.
A lot of debate and dissension within small business in this country about whether or not they should be lagging behind and have a 25% pass-through rate. These are important issues, as you well know. How are they going to be resolved?
You know what? I don't know that issue of that 20 to 25% disparity will be resolved. You have a situation where we're dealing, and you know this well, and you report on it, is the Senate rules. And this has to be revenue neutral. And trying to find revenue to lower rates becomes somewhat challenging. And I think we found, the right sweet spot to make this work. And so that's not going to change.
How about doing what the president said? What Gary Cohn implied is that there's going to be significant growth above 3%. So
that's part of it.
So let's suspend the Senate rules and Mitch McConnell's drag on the party and let her rip.
If I was a senator, I would vote to suspend the rules. Or just, you don't even have to blow up the whole filibuster rule. Just change the rules in regard to budget reconciliation and allow this to work. But I think the plan is smart. And what I got to tell you, Democrats have been pretty crafty in saying this is a tax raise for low income and a tax break for the wealthy, because it looks like you're taking the 10% rate and bringing it to 12,
right, and
taking the 39% rate and bringing it down to 35. Really, if you're at 10%, it goes to 0. And if you're at 15%, it goes to 10. So contrary to what Gary Cohn said, this is going to be a tax break for all Americans. We're going to simplify the code. You increase the standard deduction from $12,000 to $24,000 a year. It's going to be good for middle-class Americans.
I hope it's good for all Americans, and I hope you guys get it done. It's going to be a test, once again, because of primarily the Senate. And Mitch McConnell has made 2 spectacular failures and a mess of the agenda.
I would argue there's one group that probably isn't going to see much of a tax break, and that's wealthier Americans. And that was President Trump, who said, you know what, they've done well under this economy. We're helping them out. You're seeing a growing stock market. So I'm going to focus all the revenue into the middle class, and that's what he's done. Yeah.
And I think everyone who's doing well in this country is applauding the president right now.
Absolutely.
And if not, they're being very short-sighted, and I think will come around to glory in the weeks ahead.
Well, when this thing keeps growing and people are going back to work with better wages, they're just going to sit back and applaud the president for having the bold vision on tax reform and economic growth.
Speaking of the president's leadership on the NFL, we've got a Packer game, and I know you don't pay any attention to the Packers.
As a Wisconsin guy, I don't, right.
Talking about the team, and we don't know, but talking about the team's going to link arms. And why can't these players, why can't the NFL understand respect the country that you live in and owe so much to.
Lou, this is the country, this is the anthem and the flag that brought you the Civil War, that brought you civil rights, it brought you women's right to vote. This is not perfect, but the greatest country that's ever existed on the face of the earth. And we should all stand and salute our flag and stand for the national anthem. So the Green Bay Packers made a request. They said, we're going to lock arms together as Packers, but we want all of you in the stands to link arms and stand with us. What they're really asking for, Lou, is that the fans link arms supporting them as they're supporting the people who are kneeling against our flag and our national anthem. So I hope tonight that our Packer fans in Lambeau Field, they don't link arms. They put their left arm to their side and they put their right hand over their heart and they sing the national anthem. But no linking arms, no protest. Let's stand strong for America. And Lou, tonight the Packers are favored to beat the Bears. But I think most Americans sit in favor and rally on behalf of their country more so than their NFL football team.
Yeah, I think that the importance of every game in the NFL has diminished for a lot of fans.
I'm turning my TV off.
Yeah, well, mine will definitely be off. I tried to talk my wife into letting me peek in just to see whether or not how they behave, but she said no.
She said, Lou, you can't. You married a good woman then.
So we're holding steady at that. Congressman Sean Duffy, always great to see you.
Thanks for having me on.
Best to your wife, Rachel Campos Duffy, who she always agrees with me.
You know, she does. And I was telling you this earlier. You gave her your book, and now she sits and reads it at night, and we're having some, marital issues. I'm like, put Lou down and let's talk a little bit. And
well, we're both kidding, and I got to tell you, she is quite the lady, and I think we should point out, you all have 8 kids.
8 kids. Our oldest is 17, our youngest is 15 and a half months, and he goes through a great screaming stage right now, so she's at home with her hands full.
Well, congratulations to you both, and great to have you here.
Okay, thanks, Lou.
Thanks so much. Be sure to vote in tonight's poll. Do you agree NFL players should stand on the sidelines respectfully during the national anthem with their hands on their hearts and helmets by their side? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd like to hear from you, and we'd like to pass along the numbers to our friends over at NFL headquarters. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs. Tonight, the Trump administration announcing it's waiving the Jones Act. That's a century-old shipping act that officials said was hindering hurricane relief efforts in Puerto Rico. 97% of Puerto Ricans still do not have power, and half don't have running water. There are, however, more than 10,000 federal workers on the ground working on relief operations. It is such a devastated aftermath. The island has just been hit harder than anything we've seen in the Caribbean in a long, long time. On Wall Street, stocks closing higher. The Dow up 40 points, the S&P up 3, closing at a new record high. The Nasdaq up a fraction. Volume on the big board, 3.1 billion shares. President Trump delivering on his economic promises. The economy growing. Get ready for this. What new normal? Remember, we weren't supposed to get to 3% growth. 3.1% in the second quarter, the fastest pace in 2 years. Toshiba signing a deal worth nearly $18 billion to sell its chip business to a group led by Bain Capital. The consortium includes, guess what, Apple. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Democrats want you to ignore a New Jersey corruption trial. Well, who is that? That is Senator Robert Menendez, Democrat, apparently charged with some very serious items, including corruption. We'll bring you the full report. You won't see much of this on the national left-wing nut media, but we're going to have a full report for you right after this. Stay with us. Federal government officials taking the stand today in the corruption and bribery trial of Democratic Senator Bob Menendez, the first federal bribery case involving a sitting U.S. Senator in 36 years. Menendez is accused of taking gifts in exchange for his political influence to help a wealthy donor. Fox News correspondent Brian Yanis is in Newark and has our report.
Senator, if you're convicted, will you resign? Day 13 of the corruption and bribery trial of Democratic Senator Bob Menendez included testimony from a former government employee who spoke about what she believed was an unusual request by Menendez's office on behalf of his friend and donor, Dr. Solomon Melgen. Both men are facing up to 15 years in prison if convicted of felony bribery. The prosecution alleges Menendez used his political influence to help Dr. Melgen's business interests in exchange for hundreds of thousands of dollars in political donations, lavish vacations, and private flights. One of those business interests was Melgen's ICSI security company. The prosecution alleges Senator Menendez tried to get the Dominican Republic government to use Melgen's port security equipment and to reject a U.S. donation of screening equipment in the process. On Thursday, a former U.S. Customs and Border Patrol liaison officer, Stephanie Tolton, testified about an odd email request from a staffer in Menendez's office in 2013 asking her agency to, quote, consider holding a shipment of scanning equipment to the DR. Tolton testified the request was unusual. Quote, if we had deemed it necessary to provide this equipment, I found it odd that a senator would ask us to stop doing that. Then the prosecution showed the jury a receipt from Banyan Golf Club in West Palm Beach, Florida, showing Menendez and Melgen had played golf the day before Menendez's office sent that email to CBP intervening on behalf of Melgen's company. Email exchanges from 2012 claim to show the same day Melgen's family promised to donate $60,000 to the Menendez campaign, the senator asked for a meeting with William Brownfield, Assistant Secretary of the International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs Department. Brownfield works with the Dominican Republic government to keep ports secure. After today's day in court, Menendez went to Newark International Airport where he boarded a commercial flight to Puerto Rico to assess the situation after Hurricane Maria. Lou?
Brian, thank you very much. Brian Yanis. We're coming right back. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. President Trump calling out cowardly NFL owners. Owners, he says, fear their players.
I have so many friends that are owners. I think they're afraid of their players, you want to know the truth. And I think it's disgraceful.
We take up the outrageous, disrespectful, insulting behavior from the leftist league, the owners, and the players with Herman Cain. And riding a unicycle, challenging enough for most folks, but this adrenaline junkie has found a way to take it to a whole new level. We'll show you the video of the nerve-wracking stunt here next. Much more straight ahead. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The swamp still needs a lot of draining, and the deep state is doing too well in our nation's capital still. A new Government Accountability Office report shows 78 Obama political appointees are now burrowed into career, permanent government jobs, and those burrowings took place over a 6-year period. That protects them from being ousted by the Trump administration. Rather than political appointees, they're now government employees. The departments with the largest number of so-called conversions, the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice, if you can imagine. Joining me now to talk about the push for tax cuts, the NFL controversy, and much more, businessman, radio talk show host, 2012 presidential candidate Herman Cain, Fox News contributor. Great to have you with us, Herman.
Thank you, Lou. Good to be with you.
It's great to see you. Let's start with the tax cuts. I mean, this is something that the economy, in your judgment, desperately needs, has to have?
Yes. Lou, as you know, I have been looking at tax cuts and simplification since the early 1990s.
I'm going to say it before you do. 999.
That's just one of the things I looked at. Add to that the fair tax, add to that the flat tax, and now we have the Trump tax plan. It is a good plan, and here's why. Liberals will attack it using their same talking points that they have been using for 50 years. They never remind people about what happened in the 60s when John F. Kennedy and that Congress were able to get tax rates dramatically cut. They never remind people about what happened in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan was able to get the tax cuts. They use the same talking points to scare people into not supporting this. This is why I encourage all of my listeners, call your representative and your senators and simply ask them to support Trump's plan. It is a solid plan.
And this time, there's great coordination amongst the Republicans, and this president is directly appealing to the Democrats as well. It appears to be, and I will say, being a victim of past experience, it appears to be a much improved atmosphere to actually get this done.
I would describe it as I'm cautiously optimistic because of the appearance that you've recognized, and a lot of people have recognized. You are correct. But remember, we're dealing with the swamp. And when you're dealing with the swamp, you never know what the end result is going to be. Let me add this, Lou. See, President Trump approached his tax plan proposal the right way. He started with a blank sheet and said, we want 3 brackets, we want this to be the top corporate rate, and we want the rates to look like this for individuals. Right. The swamp starts with 80,000 pages, and they try to work down, and they run into all of the special interests on the way down to simplification.
The swamp
This is why...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes. This is why I believe that the president's plan is the right approach. And what we have got to do, what the conservatives have got to do, and the Republicans that are not rhinos have got to do, is to support this president's plan to get the real message out there as to what it would do for this economy.
Tonight, another football game, more controversy, and it seems like such a simple thing, Herman. The football players and their owners need to respect the American flag, the national anthem, and the nation. Why is this complicated for them?
The NFL is in a box and they can get out, and here's why. This whole thing started with one football player who had a misperception about injustice and racism in America. The media then took and ran with that and distorted it and created multiple incorrect messages as to what this nation stood for, and it started to spread. All the owners in the league has to do is to say, we're going to take this out of football. And the public will respect it, the fans will respect it.
When you say take this, you're saying take the demonstration, the protest out of football.
Take the protest out of football. Right. If you want to protest what you think America does not stand for, take it to the steps of the Capitol in your state. You can get a permit to demonstrate there all you want to. That's where you ought to take it, but you shouldn't take it to the football field, and you shouldn't insult the national anthem and the United States flag.
Amen, brother. Thank you so much. Herman Cain.
Thanks, Lou.
Great to see you. Appreciate it. And we'll see how this goes tonight. Be sure to vote in our poll. Do you agree NFL players should stand on the sidelines respectfully during the national anthem with their hands on their hearts and helmets by their side? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Please roll the video. This daredevil we're about to show you there, that's one view of him. He's looking for the perfect spot to unicycle. And where would you go to unicycle? Well, you'd want to be hundreds of feet in the air on a bridge somewhere in Serbia. He's pedaling with just inches, as you see, between himself and death. And by the way, videoing it all the while. I mean, the video is extraordinary. If that weren't enough, he also does tight walks on a steel rod. This is a fellow who is committed to thrills. And great video. Up next, NFL players set to take the field after their shameful protests on Gold Star Mother's Day. Gold Star mother Karen Vaughn says the players are insulting the American way of life. She's our guest here next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The Green Bay Packers are asking fans at Lambeau Field tonight to lock arms during the national anthem in what they call a show of unity. Rodgers previously defended Colin Kaepernick, saying he believes he isn't on a roster because of his anthem protests. the quarterback apparently doesn't understand, as Congressman Sean Duffy pointed out, that is asking all of the fans to join in an insult to our national anthem, to our flag, and to our country. And I couldn't agree with Congressman Duffy more. My next guest says her son would be mortified over the disrespect shown by NFL players. Joining me now is Gold Star mother of fallen Navy SEAL Aaron Vaughn, Senior Advisor for Concerned Veterans for America. We're joined tonight by Karen Vaughn. Karen, it is great to see you and great to talk with you.
It's good to be with you.
I want to turn to what we're watching here. You said that Aaron would be mortified at this. I think much of the country feels exactly that way. Your thoughts?
Exactly, Lou. You know, the one thing that has stood through the test of time is the American flag. It is a banner of freedom. It is symbolic of everything we are as a nation. And yes, Aaron would absolutely be mortified right now to see people choosing to disrespect the national anthem and the American flag. I mean, I don't know how many warfighters I know who have an American flag tucked inside their vest when they go to war and die with it there, you know, because it has such a powerful meaning of history and courage and bravery and the American dream, and you know, it's what they represent. It's what they fight for. So yeah, he'd be very discouraged and mortified. Yes. And
as we look at what's going on, do you have a sense of why the league would not understand that they have a responsibility to respect this country, to respect the flag? Why they wouldn't understand? This is that more than half, 60% of the country, by most polling, really resents what they're doing, and people are turning off their TV sets, canceling subscriptions to whatever is NFL, not buying their merchandise now.
Right. I think this is just completely misplaced frustration, anger. You know, yeah, we've got people who are living the American dream. I mean, they are the epitome of everything that America stands for, the American way of life. They are men who are able to come from nothing and rise to great fame and extraordinary wealth, all off the backs of men like my son who die for them with the flag, you know, with the flag draped over their coffin when they come back to Dover Air Force Base and the families meet them. So, you know, why they don't understand, I have to say, Lou, you know, you and I know we agree on this, but we had 8 years of a divisive president who literally reignited racial tensions in this country to a level that is absolutely unprecedented, and we've got a lot of work to do to turn that around. You know, I was just listening to another show last night, and there was a really intelligent black attorney on there, and he was saying that, you know, he suffered injustice at the hands of policemen, and it's because he's black. And I just want to say to African Americans out there, I've suffered injustice also, right? Haven't you, Lou? I've been pulled over unfairly. It's not always because of the color of your skin. I know there are problems, but seriously, we've got to start talking about this intellectually and start having communication between the black community and the police departments, and we have to stop the race baiting and politicizing our races. We are one nation under God, indivisible, you know, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. And we have a president, no matter how some on the left have tried to distort it and make this protest, if you will call it that, by the NFL players about President Trump. Let's talk about something else I think you and I agree on, and that is that this president, we owe him great thanks for having the guts to stand up against those who would insult our flag and our country. And people should be deeply appreciative of that as well.
Absolutely. We've seen cowardice in this area for a long time now, Lou, and it is really nice to see a man speak the truth regardless of what it costs him. It's very refreshing, and I thank God that Donald Trump is our president. I thank God that a man who puts America first and who loves this country and who will always stand for the values of the United States of America, and for those who have fought and those who have died. You know, how can we go wrong with that? It's absolutely hilarious in a tragic way that we even have to say it's good to have a president who's proud of our country, right? But unfortunately, that's where we are in this nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Karen Vaughn, thank you so much. It's great to see you again. Great to talk with you again. All the best, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
A new assessment finds the United States and our allies control barely half of Afghanistan despite 16 years of war. The Long War Journal, ironically named, reporting the Taliban is occupying or contesting 45% of all of the districts in Afghanistan. The Taliban is the most dominant in vast rural stretches of Afghanistan, the U.S. military controlling urban areas, or at least most of them. Up next, pressure building for the Republican Party to deliver on the Trump legislative agenda. Katie Freitas and Mark Simone join me here next. We're coming right back. In our online poll, we ask you, do you believe the strengthening populist wave in this country will lead to the exit of Mitch McConnell as majority leader? 87% of you say yes, it will. And joining me now, Olympic media managing editor, editor of the Daily Caller, Katie Freitas. Katie, good to have you with us.
Good to see you.
Radio talk show host on New York's WOR, Mark Simone. Great to have you with us, Mark. Katie, let's start with what's so complicated about this deal? Why aren't the players just simply honoring the flag, taking their protest of whatever it is they're protesting somewhere else and leaving work alone?
Well, I mean, work is their biggest means of which to protest, as you say, whatever they're protesting. But I think it rings so hollow to me because there's so many internal issues that the NFL has, right? I mean, you have players getting arrested for drunk driving, for murder, for abuse of animals, for massive amounts of domestic violence, and they don't seem to care very much about that. But they're perfectly okay with kneeling during the national anthem for some other loftier goal. And it screams emptiness and hollowness to me that they won't look at themselves and say, we have very serious issues going on with our players that we don't care to address, and we're going to cover all that up by having this big brouhaha about the national anthem.
Mark, what do you think?
I think they've set the record for the single dumbest protest ever. They may have had a good cause in the beginning, brutality, the police, although it's a tiny fraction. Yeah. But it got conflated into the flag, into honoring the military, into freedom of speech, the Constitution. They lost the whole point of whatever the protest was. And who are they to protest brutality a minute before they're about to commit 2 solid hours of brutality on each other?
Well, and who are they really to be talking to the nation about whatever the issue, when we are tuning in, going to the games, to watch a football game and not listen to the learned lectures of a cornerback or defensive tackle. Yeah. It is preposterous. And why the owners have not said enough and stop this right now. Katie, I mean, how are they going to get out of this mess?
Well, you have to wonder why they haven't said as much. I may think that it has something to do with potential backlash and retribution, perhaps, but they already are facing backlash from a different segment of the population that doesn't want to enjoy football and have it be ruined by politics. You're seeing things with DirecTV offering refunds. You're seeing all this money being lost because people do not want to have politics bleed into every aspect of their lives. So they're paying for this, just one side as opposed to the other.
Hey, when Lou Dobbs cancels his football package, you are in trouble.
Well, we did, and we're not tuning in tonight. As I said earlier, I wanted to kind of just check out the beginning of it. My wife said no.
Who's one of the great sports anchors, and she's not going to watch the game.
She's not going to even begin to. And I think there are millions of people in this country who feel much the same way. The idea that the left dominates and insinuates its ideology into everything in Hollywood, into movies, into television, you name it. And now the left has insinuated itself into at least 2 professional sports, and that is the NBA and the NFL. What do you think, Katie?
Well, I mean, look, this hasn't worked for ESPN, right? ESPN got political, and that blew up in its face. The NFL is going to get political, and it's blowing up in their face, too. It's not going to work out, but I would say that these are private entities. These are private companies, and if their bottom line is being hurt by the actions of people that they employ and they don't like that, they're well within their rights to do something about it, whatever that may be. At the same time, if these players want to get on their knee, they're within their rights to do it. But if there's consequences, then there's going to be consequences.
Yeah. And we're certainly within, and no one's arguing it. I mean, it's one of the most specious part of this thing is the left trying to say that President Trump was interfering with their freedom of speech. He is not, and we are not. We're exercising our freedom of speech and choice and volition.
No, the president saw a curveball that's hanging right over the plate, and he swung away. And there's going to be big repercussions next year. This is going to affect the midterm elections. This not saluting the flag, not standing up for the flag. It's going to have an effect on the elections.
And, you know, to see those people along the sidelines, whether they're coaches or whether they're players, all of the money they make, the luck and the good fortune of their lives, and the great fortune to be living in America. It's mindless, and the president has called them, and they will ultimately pay a price. No question about it. Katie Freitas, thanks for being with us.
Thanks.
Mark Simone, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And great tweets as always on this and other subjects. Thanks for being with us. Steve Forbes and Tony Shaffer with us tomorrow. Thanks for joining us. Good night from New York.